Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the discussion within Republican ranks over Obamacare repeal and what form it should take continues. Rand Paul on with Jake Tapper yesterday saying this about Senate participation in whatever a final repeal plan would look like.
Well, about a year ago, every Republican in the House and the Senate voted for what we thought was about as much as we could repeal. And we don't want to vote for anything less than that. We don't want to keep Obamacare light. We don't want to add in new subsidies or new entitlement programs. Look, the government's broke. We borrow $1 million a minute. So we want to completely repeal Obamacare, and we want to replace it with something, market reforms, that will lower the cost of health insurance for everyone. But we're not just going along with whatever they try to shove down our throats. We're going to be a big part of this. Conservatives will be listened to, or there won't be a repeal.
That's kind of a bright line that Rand Paul has drawn, and he's specifically talking about the proposal that would include tax credits, which is another form of an entitlement, money that's somebody else's that's given to you. That's a problem for some conservatives, both in the House, the Republican Study Committee, and clearly for Rand Paul. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by an expert in this policy area and the editor of Forbes Opinion. He is Avik Roy. Avik, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So your reaction to Rand Paul's comments and what they portend for getting agreement on what repeal should look like and advancing it through both chambers.
Yeah, listen, Republicans have been united in what they're against, Obamacare, but they're divided about what they're for. And a big part of the problem is, frankly, guys like Rand Paul, who don't really understand how messed up the healthcare system is and what to do about it. Because the fact is, the reason why there's so many people who are uninsured in America, the reason why healthcare is so expensive for people even who are insured, is because of things the federal government has done to mess up the healthcare system since World War II and in the 1960s under LBJ and the Great Society. We're still paying the bills for all those mistakes, and we've really got to reform this system. And if Rand Paul wants to, be against that, that's his right as a senator, of course. But he's going to thwart the ability of Republicans to pass consumer-driven, market-based reforms if he does that.
Well, how about giving tax credits to poor families who buy health insurance? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, listen, again, why is healthcare so expensive? It's because the federal government has chosen to massively subsidize healthcare for rich people. You and I and your listeners all pay taxes so that Warren Buffett and Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton and Ken Griffin can get government-subsidized health insurance. So we heavily subsidize health insurance for rich people through Medicare and through the exclusion from taxation of employer-based health insurance. And so what a lot of Republicans are trying to say is, let's balance the playing field out. Let's make sure that lower-income people and really vulnerable populations are getting some sort of tax benefit the way upper-income people do. That's all that Republicans are trying to do. It's not what Rand Paul thinks.
And Krauthammer was on Fox yesterday suggesting, hey, look, you've got to cover people that are the winners in Obamacare, that small percentage of people that are actually the winners in Obamacare as you transition to something else, because if you don't, then you're going to lose the PR battle when people who need health insurance and thus ongoing health care are not provided with the same health care coverage they currently enjoy. The flip side of that is a new study out by researchers from Harvard and University of Texas at Austin that actually finds that those who are most in need of care, suffering from serious ailments like MS and rheumatoid arthritis and others, actually get lower quality coverage and care because of the perverse incentives that Obamacare sets up. So it seems to me Republicans are always afraid of, we believe in the market, but we don't want to have to defend it against this utopian argument that the left makes, rather than saying, we believe in the market, it's going to be the most efficient, but importantly, the most moral system. It's going to be the most effective system for the least among us, and make that argument in context to what is actually happening to the least among us, the most in need of health care at present.
Yeah, listen, we don't call it welfare when we try to have special schools for kids who are learning disabled or have special needs. We don't call it welfare when we try to help people who are disabled get financial assistance they need to live their lives, right? So the thing is, there are ways to provide direct financial assistance to the people who really need the help and let the free market in healthcare work for everyone else. That's not what we've chosen to do for a very long time, and Obamacare definitely makes that worse. But we shouldn't say that just because Obamacare doesn't work, there aren't market-based solutions to achieve the goals that Obamacare claims to support. We could cover the uninsured in this country very easily at a fraction of what we currently spend on health. Here's something that people need to understand. People talk about Obamacare as the government takeover of the healthcare system. The government takeover of the healthcare system happened in 1965 when Medicare and Medicaid were passed. If you look at how much federal spending in particular, but also state and local spending, is spent on healthcare, that we spent more than all the two other countries in the world before Obamacare. And yes, Obamacare did make that worse. But again, my point is, we can provide the financial assistance to the vulnerable and the needy, and let's get the government out of the way for those of us who can afford to buy health coverage on our own, who don't need that financial assistance. We just converted the system to that. We would spend a fraction, a quarter of what we spend today, and we'd have more people with health insurance than have today.
But to lower health care prices, we need competition and we need to buy across state lines. Is that part of Trump's plan?
Absolutely. As you know, the president talks about this quite a bit. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of insurance companies don't like this idea because they like having, a state like Illinois that they have a near monopoly in and then don't have to compete with rivals in other states. So that's going to be a tough fight getting that through. But I'll tell you also, that'll help. It'll help to buy insurance across state lines. It'll help to do malpractice reform, these traditional Republican solutions. These will all help. But at the end of the day, if you really want to get at why health care is so expensive in America, it's because the government has made it effectively free for a lot of upper-income people. And you don't think that it's free, but it's very heavily subsidized, again, for people on Medicare, and it's very heavily subsidized for people who get health insurance through their employer.
Right,
we spend $1.3 trillion a year subsidizing health insurance for upper-income people through Medicare and the tax code. And trillion with a T.
And with respect to just kind of to make this granular, with respect to somebody on Medicare today or going on Medicare today, right now, real time, they will, what's the number again? They will have paid in $1 into the system for every $2.50 they get in coverage back. Is that right?
$3, yeah.
$3 back.
So look, people have paid into the system to some degree, but everyone else is paying a lot more to get them that benefit than they paid in. And that's the point. Is those dollars aren't just helping lower income people or lower middle class people who are struggling, who we might want to help, but those dollars are also going to upper income people who don't need the help. And this is what's broken about our healthcare system. And so Rand Paul, to go back to the initial part of the segment, Rand Paul, talks a big game about free markets when it comes to poor uninsured people. But I wish he would take as strong of a stand about the fact that we spend trillions of dollars subsidizing health insurance for rich people. Single-payer health insurance, by the way. Yeah. Why don't we tackle that problem before we start taking money away from poor people?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, so are you suggesting means testing at the top as a glide path to get better and more lasting market reforms?
Exactly. So let's make sure that for people who can afford, who don't need financial help from the government, from the taxpayer, we'll get the government out of the way and let them buy health insurance and health care on the open market. That starts to create a market for health insurance, which is what we don't have today. Make sure that there's a market for people who can afford it, and then you gradually phase that in for everyone else as the competition and all that stuff, the magic of the market, drives prices down and increases quality.
He is Avik Roy, editor of Forbes Opinion, president of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, and also the author of the book, Transcending Obamacare, How Medicaid Fails the Poor. Avik, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.